I would like to invite Charly Fei, Fabian Crain, Zero X Brain Jar, and Josh Lee. I will start with you, Charly. I heard that you started as a lawyer, and now you are an IBC engineer for Interchain. How did it happen?
It was a really long and convoluted journey. I don't need to bore all of you with the details now. But safe to say is, I would say my interest in kind of crypto came from more on the political level. I was very interested, as someone who was moving around a lot around the world. I did my master's in law in Germany. Like having to send money back home to the US, where I'm from, was probably the first time I really thought about why I have to pay so much money to send money around. And that was when I first learned about crypto, I think. From there, it's been more and more of a journey of learning about the political aspects, but as well the technical aspects. To clarify, I joined Interchain in the engineering capacity. I've been working as IBC product lead for the last year, but I will be passing the reins on to Susanna Evans, who is here as well, starting in June. And I will be going back to the engineering realm, finally. So cool. Yeah, it's kind of my journey.
Okay, Brian, I heard you have started your career in 2013 as editor in Epicenter, and then you have started working for the Monax company, which was building enterprise applications on EVM, and now you are working as a co-founder of Chorus One and for Interchain Foundation. I have a question for you. Like many of you guys may be wondering, what's the difference between Interchain GmbH and Interchain Foundation?
So I mean, basically, I was in 2017, I was also working at the Tendermint team. That was kind of the original team building, Tendermint, Cosmos SDK, Cosmos Hub. And so it was a US company, but then a Swiss foundation was set up to organize the fundraiser, which is the Interchain Foundation. So the Interchain Foundation is the entity that originally conducted the fundraiser, like all of the money went in there, but there was actually, few people that were kind of at the foundation, and it was funding a lot the American company, Tendermint, basically, to do the development. And then over time, it has, there was some chaos basically, and it's kind of broke up. And then some of those basically became like a subsidiary of the foundation. So that's Interchain GmbH. It's a for-profit, but it's fully owned by the foundation. So it's kind of like an extension of the foundation in a way that, Charly works for. And where a lot of the, Cosmos development happens. Though of course the foundation also funds many other entities to do Cosmos development. So I don't know how many, but it's in the 50 plus or something like that. And so I was part of the Tendermint team back then, and then at a later stage, I guess 2 years ago, I joined the foundation board. So I've been trying to help with with the sort of management of foundation and the distribution of funds in the ecosystem.
Okay, thank you. So then we have a brain jar. He studied physics and economics on Yale. He's a protocol designer, and now he's working on composable finance, which is like a, should I say, bridge between like IBC and like other non-IBC chains. And my question would be like, why did you choose Substrate as your underlying chain, Cosmos?
Yeah, sure. So I think we're kind of like the only Polkadot parachain probably here at this conference.
Yeah.
I think this is like a definitely new concept that a parachain can actually implement core Cosmos primitives such as IBC, such as CosmWasm. But for us, I think we were just mystified with the sort of modularity of Substrate and decided to use that as a framework to build our core infrastructure. But we're very much so like utilizing IBC as a methodology to interact with other ecosystems as a transport layer. So.
Yeah, good. And then we have last but not least Josh Lee, which had a presentation before, and he's from Chainapsis and Osmosis Labs. And you have started in 2018 as an editor for a Korean news outlet, and now we are working on the Kepler wallet and Osmosis. And my question for you would be, would Osmosis exist without Kepler wallet?
I would say Osmosis definitely wouldn't exist without Kepler wallet, but also Kepler probably wouldn't be able to, currently we have over 600,000 users, and we wouldn't have done that without Osmosis. So yeah, it's a very symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, I think so. So back to the main topic. I would like to ask all of you, like, what's happening with the upgrades on IBC and with the Cosmos upgrades to Aurora and Lambda. I will start with you, Charlie. What's on your roadmap currently in IBC?
Yeah, so there are a few things. I'll start first with the ones we have just released or are currently releasing, and then I'll talk a little bit about future developments. So my team, IBC Go and IBC Protocol to some extent, we share this with Informal Systems, but we are mostly working on the transport layer of IBC. So when you think about IBC as a protocol, obviously everyone talks about it as kind of a monolithic thing. We want to use IBC, et cetera. But what it really is a dual layer protocol. So underneath, there's the transport layer, which just verifies that the packet that you've sent from one chain to another is correct. But we don't tell you what to do with the data that's been in that packet. The other layer on top is the application layer. So the application layer is where you get the tokens, where you get the NFTs, where you get like all of this other cool application logic that is then executed on the chain. And so we work on both things, but on the application layer, we work more on core applications. So the things that we've released or are in the process of releasing at the moment on the application layer are the first one you may have heard a lot about, Interchain Accounts. What that is basically a way for one chain to be able to package up a transaction and have that transaction executed on another chain that receives it. So in the same way that in the Ethereum setup, you have smart contracts who can encode something called a delegate call and have this executed on a second smart contract, we're enabling Cosmos chains to be able to do this across blockchains. And what we want to enable at large with this and other features, application level features we're working on, is to create a narrative for interchain native products. So we believe that up until now, because of the power of like layer one narrative, everyone's thinking about blockchains as a platform or a way to deliver. And I think Zaki also talked about this in his talk earlier. But what we want to encourage is the idea of having functionality or features and product flows that exist using interoperability as a basic primitive. And so rather than having IBC or interoperability as a feature, we want to really encourage or at least provide the guarantee and stability for people to be able to build on top of guarantee. Cos and Wazen shouldn't have to think about how is their thing being passed across. They should just work on the applications on top, and we're enabling this through a few other upgrades. Upgradability of the transport infrastructure, channel upgradability, connection client upgradability. And then, for the future developments, I think we're looking a lot at multi-hop routing and how to increase scalability and sustainability of transactions across the interchain.
Cool. I have a question to that. Do you see like any new products coming using this new technology?
Yeah, I mean, actually, one thing I forgot to mention on the roadmap is obviously the work being done as well by Composable, kind of extending IBC outside of just the Cosmos ecosystem. It's been incubated, it's been very successful, but now we also want to open up this roadmap to other chains. So yeah, I mean, I think like the use cases will be coming from all over, but not just this ecosystem.
Yeah. So maybe Brainjar, you can talk about it more, like bridging IBC to like more chains natively.
Yeah, I mean, so I think we started with Polkadot because you're able to have essentially like client. It fits very well actually for IBC, which is obviously controversial because there's XCM within the .Sama ecosystem. But given that you're able to have like client-based bridging between Cosmos and Polkadot, theoretically, it made a lot of sense for us to just start there. But from there, we're actually trying to do extend IBC to Near and other chains that also have the capability to have like client-based bridging. There are some chains where we're still doing research on how that's actually possible, but we're very much so interested in pushing IBC cross ecosystem as much as we can.
Yeah, cool. So Brian, what are these changing meaning for you also as a staking operator? Like, what are the trends in like few months?
Yeah, I mean, I think these IBC changes probably don't have like too much impact, right, on validators,
Like maybe IBC relayers. That's also like a thing that validators can do.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing I was talking with somebody earlier a little bit about it. I guess MEV I think is a topic that's like like a huge topic in Ethereum, and we are doing, of course, we're doing like research on it. So we have like a team like that's kind of trying to understand this better. At the moment, our research is mostly focused on Solana, but I think the IBC and interoperability in IBC, MEV and IBC. I think that's going to be also like an interesting and important topic, right? Where you have like some event happening on one chain, some transaction being relayed, causing something in another chain. And so I think as IBC becomes more adopted and as MEV becomes something that, I think everyone has to deal with in some way, I think this is going to be true for validators. So I think there's going to be like an intersection there. For sure. IBC relays, we don't operate IBC layers like right now. We may start doing so. But I guess it's sort of similar, right? Because like you mainly actually as an IBC relay on this transport layer that like new applications on top, new things maybe don't have like too much impact.
Okay. And let's not forget the users. How these changes will be transported to users?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the nice thing about IBC is the transport and application layer is you can basically not have to worry too much about that because I think it's separated into different stacks with, I actually watched, I wasn't here for it, but I remember seeing Adi's presentation about kind of informal's difference on like the Hermes development team and then Cephalopod who are running relayers and kind of the relationship in that, and I think the nice thing is that you don't have to worry too much about the changes that are happening there because there are relayers who are just kind of running that software, and from the wallet's perspective, unless it's something that breaks the APIs, you don't really have to worry about that. I think that's a very good thing. Now, in terms of kind of the realistic issues that we probably face, and not us personally, but I think a lot of relayers do, is sourcing. Right now, a lot of relayers are validators because having a very reliable full node is essentially kind of a requirement to making sure that you are able to relay these packets well. And as soon as we enter the cross-chain MEV territory, where you're able to order order which blocks get in which order it gets in, as well as this cross-chain transaction, it's like that has way too much slippage, and it's like, hey, I'd like to buy, this coin, and you can capitalize on it. And right now, I think, everyone is pretty much PVE, where it's like, hey, let's just be nice to each other, but who knows, that might not be the case. And in that world, how would the relayer service provider scale? How would the endpoint provider scale? And how would, what would be the role of a validator? And I think, for us, we tend to be a lot on the kind of the receiving end of what happens here because it is so well separated. But ultimately, we do also have to kind of make choices in which services we want to provide and how we want to provide that. But I think we're sort of detached, I think more in terms of the system itself rather than just how it's implemented for users. So.
And so do you think, guys, that the ME will be the main source of income for running a relayer? Because right now you have like nothing from it.
God, I hope no. Yeah, but and that's what we're trying to avoid by making sure, there are ways that relayers can stay solvent, and not just solvent, but hopefully make a lot of money, because it's a very invisible job, I think, in this interchain ecosystem. And I do want to give shout out to, I think there's 3 teams in particular who's been exceptional in the relayer operations, where it's Notional, Crypto Crew. I know they're here, so if you run into them, give them a
shout out
say
to
this
them.
Yeah, give a shout out to them, because they are running a lot of these relayers. And then we also have Cephalopod, but I think Crypto Crew and Notional, in terms of IBC operations, not the relayer development, has been critical. and somewhat, less visible for the end users. But if these guys, all of a sudden disappeared, I don't think the Cosmos ecosystem would feel the same or work the same way as it does right now.
Yeah, and maybe Charlie, are there like any concrete plans to implement the fees into IBC? Is it done or?
Yeah, so we actually, not sure what's going on, Mike. Yeah, we actually have the beta release of the fee middleware software, which basically allows you to wrap any IBC transaction type with a fee message so that the relayer that picks up the packet will get the tip that's attached to that transaction. We have the beta release out for that as well already now, and we're expecting the first release candidate in 2 to 3 weeks. I would say though that in protocol incentivization, we feel this is a very good way forward to allow for chains to be able to, or users or chains to be able to tip their relayers. But I think there are also other ways for foundations to delegate to validators that are being run by the relayers, or there are both on and off-chain mechanisms. And what I would ideally want to avoid is a scenario where the entire cost of IBC is being offloaded onto the end user. And like in the same way that if I'm a service provider, I will pay for the cost of running my cloud backend, like AWS or whatever the case is. I would expect some sort of split like this. But again, we are offering in protocol incentivization in IBC.
Cool. Brinjar, are you planning something similar into Composable?
Yeah, I mean, I think something that could be really interesting to explore is like in the future, if we move to a world where abstraction is like something that users and developers are interested in pursuing, then you have this infrastructure that can be built around, well, how do we get, for instance, the best loan on USDC on any specific chain? And so this like routing infrastructure could theoretically be something that the same infrastructure providers run as well, at which point they could potentially take a clip or take some sort of difference between proposed routes and more optimal routes that they were able to find. So that's something we've been toying with, but obviously many steps need to happen before something like that can occur.
Okay, cool. My next question will be, do you see something that is missing in IBC right now and it's not planned yet? Something you would like to have in IBC? Or what you are thinking secretly in your mind?
I mean, I think like a pipe dream would be shielded transactions over IBC. Obviously, this poses its own issues for the user experience and kind of debugging of IBC transactions. But I think, yeah, this would be really cool. I think just in general, having IBC live in other ecosystems than Cosmos and being able to perform, being able to think about the interchain as something that's not just, that's not just like specific to one kind of set of things, but a generalizable protocol that can be depended on is really interesting. And I do want to say a bit about MEV, interchain MEV, because I think most of what I've been hearing about interchain MEV or multi-chain MEV has been largely around the idea of routing liquidity and kind of like controlling the order of transactions. This is obviously one way of conducting MEV, and it's the one that's available to us right now, given the setup of IBC and the interoperability protocols. But I think what's really interesting is to start to think about ways that we can create a situation where a transaction flow is so reliable across multiple chains that you can start to have the same sort of transaction atomicity that you would expect from an Ethereum transaction, and being able to conduct MEV across chains in a way that doesn't like enforce you having to wait for a transaction to be verified as successful in order to kind of go to the next step. Because I think that way of producing MEV is, I mean, and when we talk about MEV, it's obviously like, okay, it's people like exploiting the system. But when you think about efficiency of liquidity as it flows through a system, you can think about MEV as a way of incentivizing people to exploit those inefficiencies and therefore exposing them and allowing us as people working on the infrastructure to figure out ways to improve the infrastructure. So arguably, I think a certain level of MEV is to be encouraged, and actually we do kind of want to bring this to light just because it exposes these inefficiencies. But at the same time, we don't want to create a scenario where in order to participate in MEV, you have to be an extremely large liquidity provider who has pools on either side and can kind of like, like a supply chain sense, control all of the links or all the entire route. Like we want to make this a fair game for everyone. And so this is, I think, ideally the future that we would develop the protocol so that this is kind of the type of MEV that can be exposed.
Okay, cool. My last question would be like, can we compare like the protocol design to law? Like, because it's like a law, it's a consensus, and so on. Do you agree? It's kind of a law for the future? The design of the protocols?
I would say Cosmos has actually been leaning very well against this idea that code is law. Obviously, each chain is a little bit different in that spectrum, but I think as an ecosystem at large, been a lot more flexible in governance taking over code.
I mean, if you say law is politics,
Yeah,
maybe I would agree.
exactly. And I think there's a lot of politics there. And I do think that Cosmos started off as like 90% tech and 10% politics. I think we're moving into a territory where it's becoming 50% politics and 50% code. And in a world where there's 1,000 chains, 200 dexes, I don't know, 100 liquidity protocol, like you're gonna have to pick and choose and who you're friends with, who you're not. We're gonna see things like IBC NATO, and that's where these like IBC atomicity will be guaranteed amongst these group of chains that have that level of trust. And as soon as you leave that territory, UX or time to confirmation or things you can do will be reduced. But I think that's actually that is by design, and I think that's actually cool that we're sort of seeing this happen slowly, but definitely seeing it happen.
Yeah, I personally think that, to be honest, there should be a kind of like balance there, right? Yeah. Because having something so strongly dictated by a technical infrastructure that is not subject at all to any human element seems, for me, to be not a world that I necessarily want to live in. At the same time, I do think that there is a huge amount of potential for certain technical implementations to, for example, in fiat world, vote buying or kind of vote tallying, or just generally how governance is conducted in the implementation details is really messed up. And I think there's a lot of potential for technical infrastructure which is strongly enforced by the system in which it takes place to govern those things such that you don't have the kind of like mass corruption and spectacle that you see in a lot of elections today. But at the same time, I don't think that it's not a situation that technology is always going to be the right solution. I think having healthy and constructive governance forums where there's discussion among humans and human participants in a system about what kind of world or what kind of chain they want to build and live in is going to always be a fundamental part of the Cosmos vision of governance. And I think that's probably one of the best ways to kind of decide how to move forward together as a community.
Yeah, great. So we have a few questions from the public. Like this one was almost answered, but like when the relier provides, relier providers will stop pay for IBC transaction and start to earn on that. When it's happening? Do we have some kind of estimate?
I mean, I think, like I said, the release candidate for the middleware is going to be out in 2 weeks. From there, we can expect to, I guess, there will be the first chain starting to implement. I cannot guarantee, as like IBC core developer, I cannot tell you when the chains are going to upgrade to this fee middleware. I can tell you that there are several chains who are in the process of testing it. So, I mean, I guess what I would say, though, is that I hope by kind of revealing the important work of relaying that the current and off-chain incentives that they have access to, namely delegations from the foundations and from users, will continue to be a source of revenue for operators.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, how IBC impact the utility of Atom as a token?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we just had a governance vote, which was about adding Cosmosm to the hub, and I think it ended up being rejected. And I think why was it rejected? I think one reason is exactly that, IBC is so powerful and adds so many possibilities that actually you can do a lot of things without having to put the code on the hub. And so, I mean, I think already, right, we've had that, you know, from basically being able to stake Atom on the hub, you were able to also then go, okay, let me also put it on Osmosis and like provide liquidity there. So that was an added value for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think with other things like, you know, Interchain Accounts, like adds like a huge amount of possibility.
I would also add that Interchain Security, which is expected to launch around September, in which, you know, a chain like the Hub with its huge security or like value locked, therefore security in terms of validator set, being able to extend the Hub and therefore Atom's promise of security to child chains is going to be an extremely valuable way in which the Atom ecosystem can continue to benefit from IBC features. And I think that the advent of interchain security chains is gonna change the playing field for that.
And I want to add something real quick to that. Is, you know, I said we're going to move into this like NATO/alliances of chains. You know, like in the EU, you use the euro. So I would love to see like Atom being. I know this is also a Kepler / like wallet dependency of handling multi-fees, fees in different denoms, but you know, essentially where validators accept IBC datum or relayers accept IBC datum as fees. And I think that's kind of like the first step of forming you know, some economic tie-in where you can kind of build a longer term like relationship / alliance and closer, moving closer together and things like that. So I think that'd be interesting.
I'd also add on to that, like Atom is a blue chip, like, and people like blue chips, and if you can use blue chips in other ecosystems, that's, if people can start using Atom on a Polkadot parachain, that's like, the utility of IBC extends to Atom pretty easily, I'd say.
Yeah, I think we can end with this. So thank you guys for the panel, and see you later.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.